Webster, and you probably most remember me from the Sydney 2000 Olympics opening and closing ceremonies. I'm going to be reading Chapter 3 of Book 1 of The Magical Scarecrows, and with all my friends here from Camp Quality, and I hope you enjoy the chapter. And as we say here at Camp Quality, laughter is the best medicine. Okay, you ready, guys? It's called Scared Little Joey, Chapter 3. The moon was shimmering to life across the night sky of the Australian bush, glistening streaks of silver through gum trees that hid sleepy koalas and creating dappled shadowed pictures on the leaf-blanketed ground. Cruz had come to life and was strolling happily through his field when up ahead he noticed a rustling in the trees and decided to investigate. As he drew closer, Cruz could see a family of possums playing. Their eyes were as big as saucers. For all-night animals, eyes are large to help them see in the dark. The possums jumped from branch to branch with such grace it almost seems as though they could fly. Cruz watched the family playing for a while, smiling at their freedom and grace. When he heard a whimpering nearby, the possums heard the noise too. They stopped playing and looked around to see where the noise was coming from. "Mummy, Mummy," a little voice cried. "Who said that?" asked one of the possums. "I don't know," answered Cruz. The possums scurried down from the trees, making scratching noises on the bark as their claws dug into the great old trunks. "Mummy, Mummy," the little voice cried again. "Over here," said Cruz, pointing to a pile of leaves. Gently, Cruz knelt down and brushed away a few of the leaves. Underneath was a joey kangaroo, so small it had only just grown fur over its young body. "Hello," said Cruz. The little joey sat up and stared at Cruz. The kind scarecrow stretched out a hand in friendship towards the joey, but the joey hadn't met Cruz before and found him quite big and scary looking. In fear, the joey jumped into the air and began to hop away. "Hey, wait a minute," called Cruz. "Wait, wait," cried the possums, beginning to run after the little creature. But the joey didn't listen. He just kept hopping away as fast as he could. "Don't go that way," warned the possums. "Cecile the snake is hunting tonight." It was no good. The joey was tired, hungry, and frightened. He couldn't think properly, and he didn't hear the warnings of the possums. Even had he heard, the joey was so young he hadn't yet learned what a snake was, so the warning would have meant nothing. All that joey knew was that his mother told him not to talk to strangers, and these creatures were very strange indeed. Of course his mother had also told him not to wander too far away from her during play, but the joey had been so intent on following a butterfly, he had quite forgotten how far he had strayed from his mother. Now he was lost and alone, with no one to guide or protect him. Cruz caught up with the possums just as they gave up chasing the joey. "We dare not go any further," said the possums. "Cecile is hungry tonight, and he would surely eat us if he entered into his territory." "I understand," Cruz assured them, "but Cecile won't hurt me. I'll find the little joey." Cruz had nothing to be afraid of from the snake, because he was made from straw and wood, none of which the snake would find appealing. However, Cruz knew the joey could make a tempting meal for the big snake if the caring scarecrow didn't find him first. Slithering silently through the bush, Cecile smelled the air. Thought Cecile, "I smell dinner." The snake, like most snakes, only had small eyes. In fact, he was almost blind, but his sense of smell was very keen, and he could feel the vibration of hopping paws in his scaly skin. He knew the joey was heading right to him, so Cecile lay very still in a tree, ready to pounce. In an instant. Cecile was not a poisonous snake, but his coils were so big and strong, he needed only to wrap himself around his prey to have them completely at his mercy. The joey would have been quite helpless once in Cecile's grasp. Cruz didn't have the benefit of Cecile's keen sense of smell, but his eyes were big and he could see quite a distance, even in the dark. He guessed Mother Earth gave him good night vision, because the missions he would undertake always had to happen after dark. Up ahead, Cruz could see the joey was beginning to slow down, but he didn't call out for fear of alerting Cecile. Instead, Cruz crept up behind the joey, who by now was quite out of breath and totally disorientated. Neither the joey nor Cruz knew that Cecile was right on top of them. Curled in cunning readiness in the tree, Cecile grinned to himself when he realised the little Joey had stopped right underneath his branch. Slowly, Cecile slithered into his pouncing position, knowing that Joey was quite unaware of the danger he was in. The poor frightened Joey stood very still, wondering what he should do next. He'd been running from fear, but he didn't know where he was running to. When he glanced around, all he could see was strangely shaped, eerie-looking shadows that seemed very threatening. Nothing looked familiar, so the little Joey had no idea where to turn, and as every second ticked silently past, Cecile gradually inched closer. Another minute, thought the big snake, as he freed his coils from the branch to wrap around the unsuspecting Joey. Another minute and I'll have dinner, Cecile smiled, and his smile became so broad that the muscles on his mouth loosened and he could open his lips wide enough to swallow the Joey whole. Cecile was so pleased with himself that he hadn't noticed Cruz arriving on the scene. Quick as a flash, Cruz swooped up the Joey in his arms, just as Cecile made his pounce. The big snake's head landed with a thud on the floor. "You'll have to find dinner elsewhere tonight, Cecile," said Cruz. Cecile gathered himself, angry and indignant at having missed his prey. "You shouldn't have interfered," hissed the snake. "The night is young," reasoned Cruz. "You'll find food elsewhere." Cecile didn't want to fight the Scarecrow because he knew the Scarecrow was the friend of many bush animals. To fight the Scarecrow would mean making many enemies, and even though he was angry, Cecile was a sensible snake. He threw Cruz a look of disgust and slithered off into the night, muttering under his breath. The Joey watched all of this with wide-eyed wonder. He didn't really understand what had just happened, but he suspected the Scarecrow was his friend. "Now, little fella," said Cruz, "would you like to tell me what you were doing out here all alone?" "I've lost my mummy," cried the Joey, nuzzling into Cruz's chest. It felt soft and comfy, like his mother's pouch. He felt safe there. "Don't you worry about a thing," Cruz whispered, stroking the Joey's head. "Why don't you tell me all about it as I take you back to the possum's tree?" The possums were all chattering excitedly to one another when Cruz reappeared with Joey. "Look," called one possum, "Cruz has got the Joey!" "Hooray!" they all cheered. "Well done, Cruz. We knew you could do it." Cruz explained to the possums that the Joey had got lost during playtime that day. He wandered off to chase a butterfly and then couldn't find his mother. "I'm hungry," the Joey murmured sleepily. "He needs his mother's milk," said one possum. "And her warm pouch," said another. "The night air is too cold for a baby to be out on his own." "But how do we find her?" a third possum asked. Cruz sat down with the Joey curled up inside his jacket. Only his little head and big ears were peeping out as he listened to the possum's conversation. "Where were you when you saw the butterfly?" asked Cruz. "By a big lake," answered the Joey. "There were lots of big white birds with long thin beaks." "Ibis Lake," said a possum. "I know the place. I could go and see if his mother's still there." "Good idea," said Cruz. "I'll keep Joey safe and warm while you do." With that, the possums raced up the tree and began jumping from branch to branch in the direction of Ibis Lake. At Ibis Lake, the mother Roo had gathered with her friends. "My little Joey is out there lost and alone," she told her friends. "He'll be cold and hungry and unprotected. We have to find him." The other mothers listened with great understanding. They knew how they would feel if it were their Joey lost and alone in the bush at night. They agreed to form a search party and headed off in different directions, all searching for the lost little Joey. The Joey was hungry, but he was too small to eat solid food. There was little Cruz could do for him, except keep him warm and safe while the possum searched for his mother, because Cruz had no milk to feed the baby Roo. To distract him from his hunger, Cruz started telling the Joey stories about his adventures, and when he finished the story about the bushfire, Cruz explained, "And that is how I got my name." "It's a funny name," said the Joey, almost laughing. "That's the first time I've heard you laugh," said Cruz. "I laugh all the time when I'm with my family." Do you think I'll ever see them again? Of course you will. The possums will find your mother. You're a very lucky little Joey, you know. Why? At least you have a family. I'm all alone in the world. Cruz looked sad for a moment. Don't you have a mummy or daddy? No. In fact, in all the world, there's no one else quite like me. No family? Joey was amazed. Then how were you made? A farmer made me, explained Cruz. But lots of farmers make lots of scarecrows, and I'm the only one who's ever come to life. Are you sure? Well, I've never met another scarecrow who could come to life, Cruz answered reflectively. When I was even smaller and only living in my mother's pouch, I thought I was the only Joey in the whole world. But once I came out, I found there were lots of Joeys for me to play with. Perhaps you haven't found the other scarecrows yet. Cruz looked at Joey with sad, kind eyes. I think I would have known if there were any other scarecrows like me, Cruz replied. No, I'm truly alone in the world, except for my bush friends, of course. They are my family now. But how did you come to be alive when the other scarecrows aren't? Joey was wide awake now and full of curiosity. I can't explain it. My first memory was late one night when a chicken called for help. A fat, feral cat that really didn't need any more food that night had broken into the chicken run. Something inside me sparked into life and I knew I had to help the chicken. The chicken was quite surprised, I can tell you, to see a living scarecrow come to her rescue. She was so excited that the next day she went and told all her friends. No one believed her, of course, so the next night they all came to see, and that's how I began to meet the bush creatures. Wow, murmured Joey, you must have a very big heart if a cry for help brought you to life. The Joey nuzzled back into Cruz's chest, feeling very lucky to have been rescued by such a special and magical being. You know, said Joey, wrapping some of Cruz's straw filling around himself to keep him warm, when I get back to my family, I'm going to tell them all about you, and I bet we can find another scarecrow just like you, so you won't have to be alone. Cruz looked at the little bundle, so helpless without his mother, and wondered what it would be like if he had had a mother of his own. Of course he knew Mother Earth was his mother, of sorts, because Mother Earth was mother to all living things, but that wasn't like having someone else who looked and sounded and walked and lived the same way he did. It wasn't like having someone else who understood what it was like to be a magical scarecrow. He longed to speak with someone who could understand the particular problems and burdens he shouldered, someone who might be able to answer questions like, what should I do when it rains and my straw gets so wet and heavy and I can't move around? Someone who would understand that even on the coldest and windiest days, Cruz must stand steadfast in his field, because if he sought shelter, the humans would discover his secret. If only, he sighed to himself, if only there was someone who could understand. Everything was still and quiet at Ibis Lake. The ibis were all asleep, and the roos had all gone off searching for lost Joey. So when the possums arrived, there was no one for them to talk to. What should we do now? Asked one. Look, called another, roo tracks. They all looked down and saw the footprints of many kangaroos in the ground. But there are so many. How do we know which tracks to follow? All their chattering woke up some of the ibis. Black, beady eyes threw piercing looks at the possums. Suddenly, they were very worried about what the ibis might do to them with their long needle-like beaks. But they needn't have worried. The ibis were very family-minded birds who lived in large flocks, just as the kangaroos live in large groups. The ibis understood the importance of family members supporting and looking out for one another, and were only too willing to help. Now, what seems to be the problem? Asked an ibis of the possums. Cruz, the scarecrow, has found a lost Joey, explained the possums. Now we're trying to find his mother. Oh, is that all? Replied an ibis in a very bored manner. Well, that's easy. Climb on my back. I can take you to the mother. The possums were a little unsure about this, but they knew that Joey needed his mother's milk. and they had no other way of finding the mother Roo. "Ow!" cried the ibis. "You don't have to hold on that tightly. I've been flying for years, you know. You'll be quite safe." "Sorry," said the little possum, slightly embarrassed. The other possums all waved farewell, hoping their little friend would find the mother Roo quickly, as the ibis gracefully took to the air. "I hope he'll be all right," one whispered. The mother Roo was getting desperate. She knew her son couldn't survive much longer without her, yet he seemed to have vanished without a trace. She couldn't even pick up a scent. "My poor little Joey," she thought. "Joey, Joey," she called, continuing her search. The ibis heard her cry and swooped down to land just beside her. "Ibis," explained the mother Roo in surprise. "What are you doing awake at this hour?" "The possums woke me," he answered in a contemptuous manner. "I'm sorry," said Roo, "but why have you followed me here?" "I asked him to," a little voice said from behind the ibis. The Roo looked around to see where the voice was coming from. "Who said that?" "I did," the possum answered, climbing down from the ibis's back, feeling a little airsick. "Cruz the Scarecrow, he's found your Joey." gasped the mother Roo with delight. "Is he all right?" "He's fine. Follow me. I'll take you to where Cruz is looking after him." Quick as a flash, the possum recovered from his air sickness and started running back towards the straw-filled saviour of the bush, with the mother Roo hot on his heels. "Kids," the ibis scoffed to himself as he gracefully took to the air, returning to his resting place. The next morning there was much excitement as the Joey was reunited with all his friends. The mother Roos lay sleepily around Ibis Lake, for they were all tired from their night's search. "And then," explained the Joey to his friends, "a big snake tried to eat me, and Cruz saved me. It was a mean old snake with a long, thin tongue, but Cruz gave him what for." The ibis who had carried the possum happened to casually wander by and stopped to listen to the idle chatter of the little Joeys for a moment, occasionally scoffing to himself at their youthful innocence. "And you know what else?" the Joey gushed. All the other Joeys stood listening, fascinated by the story. They were determined they would never get themselves in all this trouble, so they decided they'd better listen carefully to the lost Joey's tale. Cruz is the only scarecrow in the whole world who comes to life. Isn't that sad? He's all alone without anyone just like him, not like us. The eavesdropping ibis listening more intently to this comment. This, thought the ibis, is not the way of things. Everyone must have another of his own kind. "And I told Cruz," said the Joey, "when I got back I'd look for another scarecrow just like him. Will you help me?" "Yes, yes," cried all the other Joeys. Stupid children, thought the ibis. How are they ever going to find another magical scarecrow? But I'll bet I can find one. The ibis wandered off back to his flock and called a meeting immediately. "We must enlist the help of all the birds," instructed the ibis. "We can travel the length and breadth of this country, and some of our feathered cousins can even travel to other countries. The scarecrow has been a friend to many of us. We must not let him remain alone. If there's another magical scarecrow out there, it's up to you to find him." From that moment, the search was on. Well, thank you very much for being a part of this magical reading. So I think Camp Quality loves
magical scarecrows.
Yay!
Bravo, bravo!